So for this video we're just starting with a default version of Cake using the development server to serve the application, and what we're going to do is look at moving logic from a template into a helper. So to get started, I'm going to create a controller, bin cake bake controller, and I'm going to call it the helper controller. And when we bake a controller or we create a controller, it goes into src controller and it has whatever you name it, which is helper, with controller appended to it. So here it is. Now this it has been baked with a bunch of actions that we're not going to use, so I'm just going to delete those out, and we're just going to use the index method. We don't have any tables with this as well, so I'm just going to get rid of that, and then I'm going to create a 4 5 0 3 19 1 2 1 5 0. Right, I'm just going to create an array of numbers, and that looks hideous, but there we go. And now to make it work, so we get to type in the controller name here, we'll find that we get an error message and it says we need to create a template under the helper directory, under the templates folder. So we can just expand templates, create a new folder called helper, and we need to create the file with the same name as the action in underscore case. So in this case it's just going to be index.php, and here we're just going to have a PHP file, but we create custom helper, and there we go, and just check to make sure it works. And if you don't specify something, it just assumes index, but that works perfectly well. And now we're going to use our view variable helper. We're going to loop through that. So we go PHP for each, helper and we're looping through numbers, so we'll just call it that. And before we do that, we want to create an unordered list outside the loop, and in this case we want to, before we do that, we want to list item, and then we're going to echo out. And how about we use a translation function here? So we want to have, and just there, and then PHP and for each. Now that needs to go there. Alright, so now when we view it, we should see our numbers, and it's the issue we've got is that 0 items is correct, but 1 items is incorrect. We need to have it 1 item, and anything above 1 is correct when it's got an S appended. So how would we fix this? Well, there are a number of different ways. One way we can fix this is by using CakePHP's inflector utility. So we could do something like, first of all, we would remove that, and we want to say, okay, so the item is going to be item and then when the number is greater than 1 or the number is 0, we want to use the PHP inflector class to pluralize or add an S to item. Otherwise, we want to strip the S off it because it's just going to be... So we can do that. So if we just have a look now, we can reload it and get that correct. And so we can see that 0 items is correct, 1 item is correct, and then the others being plural is correct as well. So 0 items. Okay, so this is a bit of a problem. You might want to reuse this. You might want to change what you do, or you want to move that logic so you can use it elsewhere in your application. So let's now look at doing that. So to package up logic for use in your templates, we can bake what's called a helper, and we're going to call this the helper, and it's located under src under the view directory in helpers, and as you can see, whatever you name it has helper appended to it, so it's the helper here. So the first bit of logic, let's look at removing this. What we want to do is public function pluralize if needed, and we want to take in this case, we're going to take in a slug and a count, and let's just pop in the, just going to rename that to count, and the item will be renamed to slug, and we don't actually need that, we can just return. So there we have our first piece of logic. So we notice that we're needing to pull in our inflector method, so, or a class. So that's all that's needed. Now let's replace this logic here. Maybe just put this on multiple lines, it just looks better. So to use a helper, so we've just created a helper, we use it in our template by this helper, we put the name of the method that we've created in the helper, and in this case we've got a slug and a count. So the slug is going to be item, and the count is going to be the number. And let's have a look as we reload it in the browser, and it seems to have worked. Now let's change it, let's call it cases, and as you can see, it knows how to singularize or pluralize words, so it's now made it correctly, 0 cases but 1 case. Now that's good, but sometimes you think, well, I can do this a bit simpler. All I need to do is append an S. So why am I doing this? So we can then start in our helper to maybe add S if needed, and all we need is a count, and then we can say, okay, if that, let's return, so if that's like that, we want to return an S, and if it's not, we just want to return nothing, and we don't want that, we want... Okay, so we could do that, we could change it and make it a little bit easier, and then say, okay, still want our translated string here, and we'll change our, and just pass the number through, and there we can just change the way we're doing it, and let's try again, and we can see that it's working with correct, and there we have the simple process of creating our own custom helper with the different methods, or using different style of methods to achieve much the same result as good as we can do in this video. So I hope that's helpful to someone.